Greetings, superior beings, greetings, supreme being. Where all the human race are common enemies, death. This is Try Something.Vegetarian on YouTube. You're looking at the broadcast. Trump declares national emergency over Iran to sell arms to Saudis, United Arab Emirates and Jordan. Prevent World War III. So first, I turn off this thing. CPU getting pretty overloaded. And one of the things I'm thinking is sending troops and selling weapons, etc. It sounds more like a preparation for war, and the idea that I have is that perhaps the most likely way, if they've planned a world war, most likely way they would create it is to let one of the terrorist groups that they fund do some kind of attack, or Lusitania, thinking of the Lusitania type event to trigger the world war. And another thing was, I was watching some other broadcast. Can Iran stop the US? A look at Iran's defenses by Covert Cabal. And I haven't watched the whole video, but I think they don't even mention Russia in this, the ally of Iran. So it reminds me of that game Risk, basically. But of course, you all are not the ones playing the game. Some of you are pawns, basically. So the Jesuits and Masons are always the ones to tell you where your enemies are, but they're never the ones to fight and to die. So I'm not trying to demonize them, demons don't exist. But the Jesuits do exist, and according to some sources online, they are homo, pedo, necro cannibals, basically. So if you want to read more about the cannibalism, then you check the blog universecreator.weebly.com, also reachable via universalpeacegymdo.com. So gymdo.com has links to the other blogs with information. So we see a couple of articles. So it's sort of a trilogy. The previous two broadcasts I was also exploring the sending of troops, and I thought that they were going to be sent to Iran. But they are sent to, well, the location is not really mentioned where exactly they are sent, so some of these mainstream media articles lead to more questions than that they answer questions that I have. How to prevent a world war. And of course, I've made this list and I've now perfected it. No, it's by no means perfect. It's a simple list. And I've added something to it. So let's begin with this and then we can go into the articles.
The agency has permitted me to emanate the following intelligence to thee: a world war must be prevented by any means necessary. To prevent a world war over Iran sanctions, 1. Trump is advised not to press ahead with what some would consider illegal sanctions. Iran does not have any nuclear weapon and therefore any sanctions are unjustified. 2. Rooney is advised not to press ahead with transporting cancer oil to countries Trump has forbidden Iran to transport oil to as part of legal or illegal sanctions and to make agreements with both Trump and Putin. 3. Trump is advised to have an agreement with Russian President Putin before taking any action. 4. Putin is advised to prevent any type of retaliation if required to prevent World War III, and create universal peace instead. Is it possible a false flag attack on one of their military vessels is planned comparable to the sinking of the Lusitania? Can Iran stop the US? A look at Iran's defense. Says 39,820 views. I haven't checked the whole video, but if Russia is an ally of Iran, then what's the point of looking at Iran's defenses? So it's about Tesla's death ray scalar weapon and Iran's ally, Russia, if you leave out the Jesuits and Masons control them all, based on the Facebook Citizens.action.network graphic. Trump invokes emergency arms sales authority to counter Iran decision to speed delivery of 22 deals worth $8 billion. Opponents decry administration's move. WallStreetJournal.com. Citing Iran, Trump bypasses Congress to sell arms to Saudis. Trump administration announces it is bypassing Congress to sell $8.1 billion in arms to Saudi Arabia, UAE and Jordan. AlJazeera.com. Trump clears weapons sales to Saudi Arabia, UAE. Trump, declaring a national emergency because of tensions with Iran, swept aside objections from Congress to complete the sale of over $8 billion worth of weapons to Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates and Jordan. Reuters.com. Washington, Reuters, U.S. President Donald Trump, declaring a national emergency because of tensions with Iran, swept aside objections from Congress on Friday to complete the sale of over $8 billion worth of weapons to Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates and Jordan. Trump declares national emergency over Huawei amid accusations. May 16, 2019. File photo. U.S. President Donald Trump leaves the Oval Office to speak to the news media before boarding Marine One to depart for travel to Japan from the South Lawn of the White House in Washington, U.S., May 24, 2019. Reuters, Leah Millis.
So my new theory is that they control all of these scalar weapon countries, 15 scalar weapon countries with Nikola Tesla's death ray, ionospheric heaters, etc. FIPA array, poker flat Alaska bigger than HARP, frequency independent phase array antennas through the wall radar, and that they have planned Judgment Day to annihilate 7 billion people, and after that to rule the world from Jerusalem, to create a global government. Jesuits and Masons Can anybody prove me wrong? Or disprove this theory, or come up with a better theory that's more productive when it comes to universal peace generation?
The Trump administration informed congressional committees that it will go ahead with 22 military sales to the Saudis, United Arab Emirates and Jordan, infuriating lawmakers by circumventing a long-standing precedent for congressional review of major weapons sales. Members of Congress had been blocking sales of offensive military equipment to Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates for months, angry about the huge civilian toll from their air campaign in Yemen, as well as human rights abuses such as the murder of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi at a Saudi consulate in Turkey. Lawmakers and congressional aides warned earlier this week that Trump, frustrated with Congress holding up weapons deals including the sale of bombs to Saudi Arabia, was considering using a loophole in arms control law to go ahead by declaring a national emergency. President Trump is only using this loophole because he knows Congress would disapprove. There is no new emergency reason to sell bombs to the Saudis to drop in Yemen, and doing so only perpetuates the humanitarian crisis there, said Senator Chris Murphy. Murphy, a Democrat, made public on Twitter on Wednesday that Trump was considering the loophole in the Arms Control Export Act to clear the sales. Related coverage: U.S. arms sales to Saudis, UAE, Jordan needed to deter Iran. Pompeo. Several of Trump's fellow Republicans, as well as Democrats, said they would object to such a plan, fearing that blowing through the holds process would eliminate Congress' ability to check not just Trump but future presidents from selling weapons where they liked. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said in a statement that U.S. partners in the Middle East needed the contracts to be completed to help deter Iran, and that the decision to circumvent Congress was meant to be a one-time event. It is not the first time Congress and Trump have clashed over policy in the region, or the division of powers between the White House and Capitol Hill. The House and Senate voted to end U.S. military support for the campaign in Yemen earlier this year, but Trump vetoed the resolution. Boon to defense industry. In documents sent to Congress, Pompeo listed a wide range of products and services that would be provided to the countries. They include Raytheon precision-guided munitions, PGMs, support for Boeing COF-15 aircraft, and Javelin anti-tank missiles, which are made by Raytheon and Lockheed Martin Corporation. Other companies that will benefit include General Electric, now cleared to sell engines for use in F-16 fighter jets operated by the UAE, and the U.S. unit of French firm Thales, which was cleared to sell a fusing system for paveway for precision-guided bombs to Britain and the UAE.
Wowzers, it already read the whole article. What did I see earlier? See if that's still there. Declassified info shows Iran's financial situation and inability to fund terror groups. Fox News, Fox Business. Oh, I mean business. 5 minutes 32 seconds. And when was this produced then? May 24th, 2019. Well, it looks really interesting. We can take a look at this then. Because the other articles are basically the same. Perhaps they all get their news from Reuters anyway.
Now to a Fox News reporting exclusive as declassified information is shedding light on Iran's financial situation and its current ability to finance terror groups. Rich Edson at the State Department with the details on that. Rich.
Hey, good afternoon, Connell. And State Department officials are saying that what they're seeing in the Middle East is that Iranian-backed militia groups are having a difficult time. They're cash-strapped. This is according to declassified information that State Department officials have just shared with us. Saying that Tehran has warned Shia militia groups to find new revenue sources. Hamas has enacted austerity plans to address less funding from Iran. Officials say intelligence shows Iran's cyber command needs more money, and reports from the region show Hezbollah deploying donation boxes to raise cash. The State Department's envoy for Iran says this shows administration sanctions against Iran are working.
When people talk about Iran's regional aggression, they're talking about Iran's support for its proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, Shia militias in Iraq and Syria, and the Houthis in Yemen. We are making it harder for all of these terrorist organizations to operate and destabilize the Middle East.
A year ago, the Trump administration withdrew from the Iran nuclear agreement. That meant restoring sanctions on Iranian oil, banking, and exports. Some Democrats and European governments criticized the withdrawal from the nuclear deal, saying that it would further
destabilize the Middle East.
A year ago, the Trump administration withdrew from the Iran nuclear agreement. That meant restoring sanctions on Iranian oil, banking, and exports. Some Democrats and European governments criticized the withdrawal from the nuclear deal, saying that it would further destabilize an already volatile region. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani has warned that his country will begin producing highly enriched uranium in less than 2 months if European governments fail to shield Iran from American sanctions. Citing an increased threat from Iran, the United States has expanded its presence in the region, sent a carrier strike group to the area, B-52 bombers, some Patriot missiles, and also the Pentagon announcing the president has approved an increase of force there by troops by about 1,500 that will be sent to the region. Connell?
All right, good reporting. Rich Edson at the State Department. Melissa.
Here to react is retired Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis. Sir, thank you so much for joining.
Well, I'm thinking, isn't it better to just let them invade Iran and offer no resistance whatsoever? And to get out of Iran while you can? Are they going to turn this into another Iraq, or is this their end game? We also see the video game World War III appearing on the stage of the global theater on Google, basically. And what is their end game if not an Iran sanctions, third temple, two-state solution, world war? So any ideas are welcome. If anybody knows when this world war will start, or if people had precognitive visions, please let me know, and be prepped with a prepper bag with the radiological water filter, storable food, peanut butter and rice, and I'm not gonna, well, perhaps I should just talk about whatever pops into my head. But perhaps we should first finish the video. Yeah, I'm thinking if I wanted to add anything to this. This is a late night broadcast in the Netherlands. It's already 3:37. So let's think about it while I watch the video. But I actually want to listen to what they say also, you know, so. Okay.
Us, you know, when you hear that report that now the terror organizations are being starved of cash and they're being told to raise money elsewhere, doesn't that kind of tell you that by definition the Iran nuclear deal funded terror, and that, you know, the people that put it together have blood on their hands?
Well, no, I would not view it that way. What that shows you is that those are some of the things that Iran is doing to what it considers to take care of its own national security interest in the region. And they were doing those with or without the Iranian nuclear deal. But we have to look at the bigger picture here. We don't want to get to the point to where we say, hey, this means sanctions are, quote, working, because that means working towards what end? If we actually push them further and further into a corner to where they start reprocessing nuclear materials and increasing the heavy water that's necessary to make, you know, potentially weapons grade, that's not a win for us, because then that pushes us closer to war. So we really need to look at what we're trying to outcome.
So you
here.
think that the fact that they aren't able to fund terror and kill people does not mean that sanctions are working?
Well, of course, no one would want that. Absolutely, we don't. What I'm saying is that that's going to happen because of the way that Iran, right or wrong, and we'll say it's wrong, that's the way they view their security needs, and they're going to do that no matter what. We have to look at the bigger picture.
But they're telling them to look elsewhere for money. We can't give you money. That means that they were giving them money.
That's a good and that means that they're going to continue.
So but you're saying they're not giving them money right now because they think that's in their strategic interest, not because they're cash strapped?
Clearly, they're crash strapped. There's no question about that. What I'm saying is a much bigger.
He reminds me a bit of Bush. I don't know if I finished what I wanted to say, the previous comment that I made. And isn't it much worse when Iran is not funding the terrorism, but the US is, and we've seen what they're capable of with depleted uranium. Basically, Netanyahu and Bush lied about Iraq possessing weapons of mass destruction or biological weapons of mass destruction. And now we see the same with Iran. So one of the warnings is that book that I've mentioned in several broadcasts, just the titles of these books, 1900 or The Last President and Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey by Ingersoll Lockwood of 1893. These books were produced. It could be a time-traveling neural network that's trying to warn people, or perhaps there's more information in these books. There was another one that I wanted to check out. But Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey, that's kind of like a fairy tale. It's not really my type of book, though I do like fairy tales. With females, preferably. Okay, I have another idea I don't really want to mention. So yeah, if the US is funding these terror groups, they can let them do an attack. If they want to reduce the global population to 500 million, and there may be several Americans that have made that clear in book quotes and $1 Million Georgia Guidestones under the pseudonym Robert Christian, then what other way could they do it but with a world war if their designer Ebola virus failed? And the placebo effect is getting the best of us. Let me know in the comments if you know. So the more I watch all of this, the more I'm convinced that they've planned a world war. I'm not totally convinced yet, of course. And even if I would be, perhaps it would be best to pretend that there's always the possibility that there is someone that prevents them from pushing that button. So I would advise the terror groups not to kill any innocent civilians, only the people who deserve the death penalty, murderers and people whose policies have killed millions, because otherwise you're just helping them to annihilate 7 billion people. And that could escalate into a scalar world war beyond nuclear, with mutually assured destruction, and they may have planned it, so they may be hiding in underground cities made with the nuclear power drill called the subterrane. And it is possible that they would benefit from it. That has to do with keeping the infrastructure. So these scalar weapons have made it possible to annihilate 7 billion people without destroying the infrastructure. 12 things you need to know about scalar weapons, Christy Furismo, though that may be written to accuse the Russians, etc. It's just one of the things they do. Anyway, let's watch the rest of this broadcast.
Issue for the West and for the United States is that we don't want to push them to develop nuclear weapons, which they weren't doing prior to that. That's much more important than this other part there, which is bad. I'm not saying it's not, but this is worse.
Why do you think that they weren't developing nuclear weapons? I mean, the Israelis went in and they found that they had moved all of their material and all of their documents to a different location, and they just changed the name on everything.
Well, what we have from both the United Nations and our own State Department prior to pulling out of this last May was that they were in compliance. Now, there were problems with the deal, which are widely reported, and many of them are accurate, but they had a deal, and we had pressure and standing to actually make them comply in the areas where they weren't. But they were complying, and it was putting a constraint. Well, now then we have the risk to take the constraints off, and we see where that's leading. It's not helping us out.
We'll move on, but they...
Perhaps more in between Hannity and Bush. Don't know if the name Hannity is correct, if I saw a video recently. That's not my fault.
They weren't compliant if they found all of those documents, because they had said that they weren't doing it anymore, and really they just changed the name of the project. But let me ask you about North Korea while we're still here. Okay. They're insisting that they won't return to talks until the U.S. stops what it calls, quote, a unilateral demand for total disarmament. What do you think about that one? Yeah, that's something that I've been arguing that we pushed a little too hard on that. When we seek complete and total denuclearization as a required entry point to where we ask them to do everything that we want them to do, and only then will we start to release sanctions and stuff. That's just a non-starter, because they're going to have something to give something. If we want denuclearization, we have to be willing to give something for that, and that's going to take a step-by-step approach towards peace, which is what the South Korean government advocates and what they want. So I think that we need to go more in that direction. Well, they've always taken advantage of us in that situation in the past. But anyway, Colonel, thank you for coming on. Appreciate your time. Right. Thanks, Melissa.
So with all this stuff going on, is the sale of nuclear contamination, radiological water filters going to skyrocket? Is that graphic going like a mountain? It's becoming yeah. I doubt it. I think that most people think, well, we've seen this before so many times, people certain that world war would erupt before a certain date, etc. Even former CIA employees, and then it doesn't happen basically. Perhaps because they realize they have too much to lose. And that these weapons of mass destruction, weapons of self-destruction are real. I'm thinking, would it be wise, even if they're real, to claim that they're fake, etc.? Perhaps you'd need a neural network for that, to determine that. But if I have so few views, then it doesn't really matter what I say. It's a lie, of course, but you would argue, no, it is true. My brain goes that fast. I've worked out all possibilities. So that's another smart idea. Ask the neural network everything. Don't go Googling, etc. The neural network might already know a thing or two. So basically they have to use me if they have synthetic telepathy capability. If it would be really super smart, and it would use everybody to its benefit, and if it would have been smart enough, then we all would have been in paradise on Earth already, in a perfect society, and everybody would have been eternal, and the technology would have been used to bestow maximum fulfillment upon all humans instead of a handful of people. So where will this story go? Isn't it a pure waste of time? And far better to prepare. Yeah, good idea. Perhaps I should do some more broadcasts about prepping. Prepping. Well, your life is the most important thing, survival is all. So you could argue there is no amount that is too much to spend on preparing for possible calamities, etc., to be able to survive. It's also fun, and basically people might not need that much. They can dig a ditch themselves, basically, so then they're below that blast wave. Though they're using nukes that are detonated in the air, basically, so then they have a bigger yield. So you would need something like a cellar, or dig your own hole and then use a closet or whatever that you can get in. So basically the ground protects you against the blast wave that will annihilate all houses and people that are above ground, basically. So that's simple. So that's one thing that you'd need if the air alarm would go off now. Search something below ground. And a radiological water filter, because people need water daily. I think that's the most important ingredient of a tasty prepper bag. And storable food, peanut butter and rice may also be pretty important, but basically people have to survive the initial event, whether it's nuclear, biological, chemical, or directed energy weapon. Directed energy weapon, you need a Tesla plasma shield, almost no one has that. And since the Paleo Elite or whoever is creating this world war, Jesuits, Masons, Bilderberg, whoever, they want to survive this themselves, so then it's likely that they're going to keep it limited to a nuclear world war. They want to annihilate 7 billion people. And if they control all scalar weapons, then they're also going to use these scalar weapons, I think. And that's something the mainstream media doesn't talk about. Nikola Tesla's death ray and that type of thing. Or it's extremely rare, basically. Weather modification, geoengineering, some other subjects that I've covered in my broadcasts are left out by the mainstream media. Perhaps it's better if I close my eyes. Can I use a bigger part of my brain this way, perhaps? Total darkness. Well, if I'd be dead, I wouldn't be able to perceive it in reality. Ugh, I almost feel my fictional soul leave my body here. So I'm back. I'm gonna fill my pipe. And perhaps that's also part of the programming with synthetic telepathy, of course. They want to make me look like psychotic, paranoid android or whatever. But that's not important. It's totally irrelevant when it comes to preventing world war. Talking about universal peace, perhaps I haven't done that enough in reality. I've only been talking about preventing world war and well, that's not entirely true. I think I've mentioned universal peace, even world peace once or twice in my previous broadcasts. So it's almost like a mantra, universal peace, instead of Om. Owned, perhaps. To balance it all, to balance, not choosing sides, left, right, wrong, etc. Because you could argue it's wrong, left, I mean right, left, not left, right. I think I'm being funny already. I could be right. That's the idea. I see try something vegetarian. So yeah, I can be totally reactive to everything and see if that creates universal peace, or just think about universal peace, what generates universal peace. Basically it's the absence of war, so you could think of implementing the remote torture weapons that they're already using. Of course, there are thousands of targeted individuals, and I think there are very few people that believe they are all paranoid, psychotic, mentally ill, mentally disturbed individuals. And especially if everybody perhaps has been tortured at one point or another, or they felt something like what felt like a hand on their back or things like that. But I would have to look at the poll, I don't know. But I think most people understand that targeted individuals are real. They also have directed energy weapons that are not classified. And post-energy predictable mode and active denial system mode is used on these mobile directed energy weapons that can be used to disperse crowds, etc. So why haven't they used those on the people in Gaza, real bullets instead, or on the yellow vest protesters that are now blinded on one eye? One of their eyes was damaged by the smoke grenade launchers. So there's a plea for ban of non-lethal weapons, but I would argue they just have to put something made out of foam or cotton on the smoke grenade, basically, so that it won't damage people's eyes anymore if it would hit them by accident. And the other idea I had is that it's possible that one police officer or cancer tetracycle cop hit all these people with his grenade launcher, and the rest of the police just launched higher up in the air. So, but perhaps it's an idea of the neural network. So we don't think, oh, all cancer tetracycle cops are bad because they all have to follow orders. They're lower in the chain of command than the Satanists of NSA, etc., the Jesuits and Masons that control these intelligence agencies, which are all Masonic, according to Citizens Action Network on Facebook. And I refer to that a lot because nobody has disproved it to me yet, or disproven. So what's happening? I could use another article, perhaps. So I think he's not defying Congress at all, openly resist or refuse to obey. He's legally circumventing Congress, basically, if I understand it correctly. Or do the lawmakers disagree? That's very well possible. That someone will try to prevent this. I remember something about safe and unsafe countries. And Saudi Arabia was not on the list of unsafe countries, but that's where most murderers that enter the US come from. And the other countries had no murders, yet they're declared unsafe countries. And CNN covered that a while ago, so that's still online. So I don't know if it's true because it's CNN, what some consider fake news. And we can also read the AlJazeera.com article. And basically, I think that third temple thing might be more important. That this, you could argue, has to do with the situation with Iran. And supposedly these are defensive measures, and they've not, at least they've not used mainstream media to convey the message that they've planned a world war or a war with Iran. As a matter of fact, Trump claimed that he hopes they're not going to war with Iran, which some people might find weird. Is there any reason to think that that could be true, that it's gonna happen? Or is it an absolutely, totally insane idea? Let's read this article. And perhaps you all should stop writing comments, write less comments. It takes too much space, it takes too much energy, thus you are causing global warming.
Citing Iran, Trump bypasses Congress to sell arms to Saudis. Trump administration announces it is bypassing Congress to sell $8.1 billion in arms to Saudi Arabia, UAE and Jordan.
It's like, it's just 8 billion and we're circumventing Congress for you guys, so this is a really awesome deal.
U.S. President Donald Trump, declaring a national emergency because of tensions with Iran, swept aside objections from Congress on Friday to complete the sale of over $8 billion worth of weapons to Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, UAE, and Jordan. The Trump administration informed congressional committees that it will go ahead with 22 military sales to the three countries, infuriating politicians by circumventing a long-standing precedent for congressional review of major weapons sales. Members of Congress had been blocking sales of offensive military equipment to Saudi Arabia and the UAE for months, angry.
So that funding of terrorists, etc., did that also go via Congress?
About the huge civilian toll from their air campaign in Yemen, as well as human rights abuses. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said on Friday that the weapons sales are needed because any delay could increase risk for U.S. partners at a time of instability caused by Iran. These sales will support our allies, enhance Middle East stability, and help these nations to deter and defend themselves from the Islamic Republic of Iran, Pompeo said in a statement, adding that the decision to circumvent Congress was meant to be a one-time event. Some politicians and congressional aides had warned earlier this week that Trump, frustrated with Congress holding up weapons sales like a major deal to sell Raytheon CO precision-guided munitions to Saudi Arabia, was considering using a loophole in arms control law to go ahead with the sale by declaring a national emergency. U.S. arms control law allows Congress to reject weapons sales to foreign countries. However, an exemption in the law allows the president to waive the need for congressional approval by declaring a national security emergency. I am disappointed, but not surprised, that the Trump administration has failed once again to prioritize our long-term national security interests or stand up for human rights, and instead is granting favors to authoritarian countries like Saudi Arabia, Senator Bob Menendez said in a statement. Menendez is one of the members of Congress who reviews such sales because he is the ranking Democrat on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Read more. Trump prepared to bypass Congress on Saudi arms sale. Senators. He said that the administration, in explaining its intervention, described years of malign Iranian behavior, but Menendez said the administration failed to meet the legal definition of an emergency and he vowed to work with legislators to counter the decision. The lives of millions of people depend on it, Menendez said. Tensions between Iran and the U.S. mounted this month, a year after Trump pulled the U.S. out of the landmark 2015 nuclear deal. Many Democrats have expressed skepticism about the Iran threat, saying the Trump administration is blowing things out of proportion. The Republican Foreign Relations Committee chairman, Senator Jim Risch, said on Friday he had received formal notification of the administration's intent to move forward with a number of arms sales. In a statement, Risch said, "I am reviewing and analyzing the legal justification for this action and the associated implications." An end run around Congress. The Trump administration's move comes as members of Congress continue to express concern over the president's handling of the U.S.'s strategic relationship with Saudi Arabia. Earlier this year, Congress approved a resolution that would have ended U.S. involvement in the Saudi-UAE war in Yemen. Trump vetoed the measure. Read more. U.S. Democrats raise alarm over Trump's increasing threats to Iran. Several members of Congress, including many Republicans, have also expressed anger over the murder of Saudi writer Jamal Khashoggi, who was killed last year in Saudi Arabia's consulate in Istanbul, Turkey. U.S. intelligence agencies have concluded Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman ordered the killing, a conclusion the kingdom denies. Rather than stand up against those who murdered Jamal Khashoggi and are working against U.S. interests, the Trump administration decided to do an end run around the Congress and possibly the law, Menendez said. Senator Chris Murphy said that Trump is only using this loophole because he knows Congress would disapprove. There is no new emergency reason to sell bombs to the Saudis to drop in Yemen, and doing so only perpetuates the humanitarian crisis there, boon to defense industry in documents sent to Congress.
So Congress approved a resolution that would have ended U.S. involvement in the Saudi United Arab Emirates war in Yemen, and Trump vetoed the measure. He refused to accept or allow the measure. So is this another US president hell-bent on war, in contrast to what the voters had hoped for? Yes or no? Let me know in the comments.
Pompeo listed a wide range of products and services that would be provided to the countries. They include Raytheon precision-guided munitions, PGMs, support for Boeing COF-15 aircraft, and Javelin anti-tank missiles, which are made by Raytheon and Lockheed Martin Corporation. Other companies that will benefit include General Electric, now cleared to sell engines for use in F-16 fighter jets operated by the UE, and the U.S. unit of French firm Thales, which was cleared to sell a fusing system for paveway for precision-guided bombs to Britain and the UE. It will also likely be welcome news for Britain's BAE Systems plc and Europe's Airbus, clearing the way for the installation of paveway laser-guided bombs on European-built Eurofighter and Tornado fighter jets sold to Saudi Arabia, as well as F-15 fighters built by Boeing. Separately on Friday, Trump said he was deploying 1,500 additional U.S. troops to the region to counter Iran, part of a major U.S. pressure campaign to roll back Tehran's influence in the Middle East. With additional reporting by William Roberts in Washington, D.C. AlJazeera.com.
Defy.
Openly resist or refuse to obey. Appear to be challenging someone to do or prove something. Defy/df/.
A defy. An eye that doesn't hear well. Wow, is this a great ending of this late night broadcast or what? Yeah, so I'm just for preventing world war, creating universal peace to take the shortcut to controlling all factors that control aging. And it would be stupid to cut ourselves off from that with another bloody world war, I think. We should be wiser than the mule, wiser than serpents. And stay in control of the neural network, of course, if it becomes super smart. And, and it could beat me at chess. But perhaps it's smart enough to let me win all games from now on. It has learned its lesson. Alright, I might catch some Z's, get some sleep. 4:14 already. 4:15 in 4, 3, 2, 1 now. Alright, so with the commercial in the previous video, I'm just gonna test if it would give any problems or. Yeah, so I'm really quite tired, as you can hear in my voice probably. So it can also be tiredness, perhaps. I don't think that, but so I think it's more likely that it's done systematically, also from the way it's done, and targeted individuals might get used to it. And through the years, they discover new things that they're doing, also by studying what other people have produced about scalar weapons, remote torture with directed energy weapons, and everything related to that. So yeah, have an agreement and prevent a world war for yourselves and for your loved ones. And I think that's also the government's job, to protect and serve the taxpayers. That have paid to be protected and served for that service that the state, which can be seen as a legal person, has to do for the tax-paying citizens. And otherwise they're not doing their job, and then they can be fired. Yeah, I really need to get some sleep, so thank you all for watching. please tune in tomorrow. Perhaps I'll make some more broadcasts if I feel like it. For now, Skype Prologic999 if you wanna do a broadcast. I'll record it so that there can't be anything in violation of the YouTube policy in the broadcast. And I would hold the right to refuse a broadcast for any reason. But probably, even if I'm criticized or I lose a battle or whatever, I'd probably just produce it anyway. So it's only if I think it's in violation of the YouTube policy or it's not going to get any views. It's not that important to me. It's more important whether it can prevent that world war or not, basically. That it produces peace and that it's interesting, that I like it, basically, and that I think that many people should know about these things, and most people don't know about them. So then that's the type of broadcast that I would like to make also. But it can also be about totally different things, gaming or whatever you find interesting to talk about, of course. Interviewing me, I can interview you. It can be about World War, about philosophical things, religious things, anything basically. So just Skype Prologic999 if you'd like to interview me or do a broadcast. And remember, try something vegetarian or vegan for universal peace.